Mark, beautiful day. Great way to end the series of the regional fly-ins. For some reason, the weather gods have smiled upon you, and I'd like to know where you got your connections for this particular run.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're really gratified with the weather here in St. Simon Island. It's a terrific Saturday morning. A little cool, but we got a lot of planes turning out this morning, and a couple thousand people here again celebrating this airport and aviation with AOPA.
Obviously, coming through the end of the year, you've had a year in grade now. There's been a number of particularly difficult issues you've had to deal with. Obviously, Santa Monica didn't turn out well. The third-class medical has been a recalcitrant issue, but then again, it's the FAA. Who knew? What lessons are you learning right now from the most difficult issues you've had to face this year?
Well, it certainly has been a big year and a lot of learning from myself, but I'm really actually excited about some movement. Certainly Santa Monica I'm disappointed with, but Santa Monica has been a disappointment for 50 years, and I think we're going to continue to plow ahead with trying to protect that airport and its airspace. And we did have a good turnout with people that thought that losing Santa Monica would be really a bad idea, but we'll continue to work on that one. The third-class medical, I still remain optimistic. One of the things I've learned is it takes longer for the government wheels to turn than I can even imagine. But we have, two really bold efforts here. We've got the FAA working on their rulemaking, which we believe will be moving through Department of Transportation soon and onto Office and Management Budget here very soon. It'll become public exactly what that looks like. But certainly as we get Congress back in place here in January and we're starting renewing that effort to move the legislation forward, we feel pretty emboldened that they're getting the largest caucus in the country of any type to support us.
Hindsight being 2020, are there things at this point that you've learned from these two particularly troublesome issues that will change how you work with either those issues or those agencies in the future?
I think all of it has to be that what's the long-term gain that we want to protect general aviation and make sure that it's accessible and affordable, and continue to find ways to work with as many constituents and partners in the aviation world as we can to try and get those agendas heard. I'm not disappointed that we've been able to pull together a pretty good coalition of aviation groups, and I'm not disappointed that Congress is listening to us better than ever. And I actually think the FAA is responding because of that effort. So I think we're getting things done. So just keep pushing it one day at a time.
We have a very troublesome deadline coming up a couple of years from now with the 2020 mandate. You talk to folks in the avionics community, they're happy to do the business, but the problem is at this stage of the game, they've got to do something along the lines of 140 airplanes a day just to meet the mandate as it stands. FAA seems quite recalcitrant that 2020 is it. There will be no delays. Where do you see AOPA's role in this, and more important, how realistic is the 2020 mandate at this point?
Well, I've certainly heard from the FAA that they believe that the 2020 is in stone. And we are not necessarily uncomfortable with that. We just think you need to look at flexible alternatives for low cost. We did some studies to point out that there's about 80,000 aircraft that are a value of $40,000 or less, and that average is around $25,000. So an installed system that kind of starts at around $4,000, $5,000, or $6,000, depending on the airplane, that doesn't do anything for that aircraft, creates no visibility, we don't think is the right place to be. We think for a high-quality airplane, maybe that $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 is fine. But we want to have the FAA and the industry, and we're going to work hard with Gamma to find out, are there alternatives that we could put in place to protect these airplanes so they don't go off outside of Mode C and lose visibility of 70 or 80,000 airplanes. So we're trying to represent our membership to say, is there another way that we can lower the cost for that group? I encourage people to look at some of the new equipment from some of these manufacturers. It's pretty neat stuff and some good visibility stuff that's going to be good for the cockpit, for the right aircraft and in the right place. But those are decisions that the individuals need to make. We just want to make sure that the FAA is hearing us and saying, we take a big risk here if we don't get these airplanes to stay in the Mode C.
There's a next-gen GA fund that's being held up by the FAA, money that could conceivably allow people to find affordable financing for whatever changes they need to make. For some reason or another, we can't get the FAA off the dime on that. Any feelings or thoughts about where that's going and what should be done?
I'm not really sure where that stands at the moment. We still think that the major effort we're interested in is trying to protect these 80,000 aircraft that are low value, and experimental aircraft are not even included in that number, or LSA aircraft. So there's a lot of aircraft that need to be thought of. What are the choices of a lower cost alternative? Remember that when this 2020 mandate was put in place, there wasn't even a thing called an iPad. It doesn't even exist yet. So there's a lot of technologies that have come along that give great visibility in the cockpit that are lower cost. Can't we just take a look at some of those options?
Since the early days of powered flight, pilots have struggled with landing in crosswinds. In fact, crosswinds and wind gusts cause more landing accidents than fog, thunderstorms, and icing combined. That's where the Redbird X-Wind SE comes in. By placing pilots in gusty crosswind conditions for extended periods of time, the X-Wind SE gives instructors all the time they need to teach the pilot the proper techniques for landing in crosswind conditions. For more information on Redbird X-Wind SE and Redbird's entire line of flight training devices, visit www.redbirdflightsimulations.com.
In the salad days of AOPA, membership was well into the low 400,000s. As I understand it now, it's hovering somewhere a little bit north of 300. That's a pretty disconcerting number for a number of reasons. But the big question right now is AOPA in a position to recapture past glories? Can it get itself back up to the 400,000 mark? Is it necessary to get us back to the 400,000 mark? And why do we lose 100,000 members?
Well, I think if you look at the history of membership and you look at the history of the pilot population, one time there was 1 million pilots in the country, and today there's about 600,000. I think they've actually tagged right alongside each other for the most part. I am actually very excited about these regional events, what we've done to kind of be grassroots, recalibrate with a lot of members that have never gone to an expo or a summit. We think 70–80% of these people are showing up and engaging with the AOPA at a grassroots level. I feel very good about what's happening with membership numbers right now in terms of directionally where we're headed. But it's up to us, and we've got to create a value. We've got to create enough information to be part of this great membership. It's still the largest general aviation population in the world.
Is the membership scenario steady right now? Is it stable? Is it showing any signs of growth, or is there still a little bit of a slide going on?
It's really solid right now. It's really solid right now. So we're really happy about where membership is, way above our budget this year. So we think we're on the right track. There is still, remember, a shrinking overall pilot population right now. It still kind of trails with that, but I'm satisfied, actually very satisfied with what we're seeing for this year.
What is AOPA going to be doing about building a new future based upon a much more diverse and younger pilot population?
Well, we certainly have done a lot of research this summer and learned a lot about who is not flying, but say they want to fly. And we've learned, whether they are in motorcycling today or in boating today, those are the most likely converts to aviation, we believe. And how do we present an offer that says, maybe this you can fly, or 152, remind them that you can fly for a lot less than you think, making the aviation club a really big part of aviation's future, so people come out and enjoy the airport and then engage, and make it as diverse as possible. To have less than 5% of the population be female in aviation makes no sense at all. So we'll be looking at communicating, but on a really grassroots level. We're not going to go out and do a broad campaign until we test it, work in some of these areas around airports to say, let's get people out to the airport, see what they think. You'll be seeing a lot more of that engagement level as we go into 2015.
Well, I've hit you with all the negative stuff first. What are the bright spots? What are the things that, when you hit the desk in the morning, kind of go, okay, yeah, this is cool. I want to work on this one.
Well, I think there's a lot of good things happening in aviation. I mean, if you look again, just fun things like the iPad, think about the situational awareness in the cockpit today, what it was a few years ago. Knowing that we're actually going to have an alternative to leaded fuels here in not too distant future, I think we feel good about where that's all headed. I actually think that the positioning of general aviation today is kind of bottomed out. I do think that we're on the way back. But it's going to be different. It's going to be around flying clubs. It's going to be about rejuvenating older aircraft. It's going to be about getting people to celebrate these airports and having fun at the airport. Local, local, local. I get excited about that kind of interaction with people and creating a community around aviation. And I think working with my partners, whether it's DAA, Jack Pelton, we're working harder together, NBAA, helicopter groups, to make sure that we talk about the great things in aviation, the community that exists, 5,000 public use airports, the way you see the country. And it is a uniquely American experience.
Finally, the extraordinary story of the world-changing X Prize space competition is being told and illustrated with hundreds of insider photos in Jim Campbell's colorful new book, Beyond the Blue. Journey with Jim as he flies formation with spaceships, plays in zero gravity, prepares rocket racers, and documents the amazing first decade of the personal space race. Available this summer. Get your advance order in now by checking out www.kindredspirit.com.
It's getting very difficult right now to open a paper or to read a blog and see folks who are not educated about general aviation opine without knowing an aileron from their tail feathers. Where can AOPA and the community, where can they make the best outreach right now in trying to make the media responsive to the facts of the matter?
I think we have not done what we need to do in that area. As we look at even the Null report and talk about accidents that have existed and trying to learn from them, which are really important for aviators to always learn from, but without context of saying, there was 18,000 people that fell off a ladder or got electrocuted at homes last year. And the news seems to be very interested in, an aircraft crash, because it is unusual, by the way, and that's why they seem to have a lot of interest in it. But if you look at the numbers, it's very, very small. 170 million people went for a ride in a general aviation aircraft last year. About 700 million went for a ride in an airliner. it worked out pretty well for just about everybody. So I think we've got to do a lot better job of building context around what aviation is and the good thing it brings to the market. Part of the area that we're going to shift our focus to is we found out there's over 100 different high schools now, all of them less than the last 5 or 6 years, have put the STEM program to work in aviation. And how do we start communicating with those groups and being kind of an advocate for them so they can take their best practices from one high school to another, make sure that those people have a pathway to get into aviation, mechanics, controlling, flying. I'm pretty excited about what's happening out there, and STEM is a great program for aviation.
Going back to the question a little bit, let's look at USA Today. These same people come out, make a play of talking to us, ignore everything that's said, and go out and write the story anyway with phenomenal inaccuracies. Why do we keep talking to those people without at least demanding an opportunity to make sure that these things are going to be done properly?
Yeah, I'm very interested in trying to find a way to get to these people and say, let's talk about both sides of this issue. And if they're trying to expose something, let's make sure there's context around it that we think is accurate. We think that there's been a lot of inaccuracies. And reminding them that it's a very successful industry here in the United States and it puts a lot of people to work, creates great jobs, and it can be done safely very easily. To keep gas in the tank and keep flying in the weather that you're equipped to fly in is a very safe activity. So I think we've got to do a better job of building media campaigns to get these people. But you've been in it for a long time. It's never easy to get these people if they don't want to listen.
2 last questions. 1, what were the highs and lows of this year at AOPA for you? And number 2, what kind of report card would you give yourself?
Let me say that I'm still very pleased to have this opportunity to lead this organization. It's a very unique organization, and I feel very strongly about its future. You know, we resized the organization last year. We focused on the things that I think are really membership-centric, and I think the engagement level that we look for around members has gone up significantly. I'm very happy to have met thousands and thousands and thousands of members that are very happy with their membership and listening to them about the things that are important, whether it be the third-class medical, whether it be ADSB or fuel issues and tax issues and all the others, user fees. And listening to our members and I think reacting in a way that says, well, we're going to take what we have as our resources and focus them on the 2 or 3 things that we can make a difference in, and then we get those done, move on to the next thing. But I think I had a good first year, but it's a building year, and every year you learn from the last and move on forward. We've got big agendas, and I think we're focused on the right things, and I am very proud of the 200-plus people that work for AOPA and what they do for our members. I think they are really engaged. I think they feel like they're making a difference for aviation, and I'm very proud to work with them.
And the grade you give yourself?
Well, certainly a passing grade. Let's assume it's a pass-fail, and I would take a passing grade, and I think it was a good first year. I was happy with it.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Thank you.